emitter and whether it's high energy or not. So when they do this, it's basically a form of lying. It's going to lump it all together.
It's called a liable omission. Sure.
Yeah, it's a liable omission. And they're non-scientific people, and they have all kinds of fancy dose-response equations or weighted tables, and it's a pile of garbage. It's basically mathematical gobbledygook that has no basis. You know, they talk about gray units or sieverts, etc. So many gray units per hour, etc. Milligrays, they call it. So anybody like me who does have a background in radiation toxicology, I can tell you that this is bull-faced lies. When they talk about the sparsely ionizing radiation and natural background are likely preventing cancer and other genomic instabilities, this is actually published in Dose Response in 2006. So they're trying to say it's a good thing to live near a nuclear reactor, a little radiation. You know, a spoon. Like, let's put it this way: we'll take the song, a spoonful of sugar makes the medicine go down. How about a few radioisotope particles makes you not even have cancer? I mean, how good? Just like when they came up with that commercial I saw on TV a few years ago, where mercury in vaccines might actually be positive. It may improve behavior.
Some idiot said that within the past several months, by the way. Yeah.
Right. Well, of course it improves behavior. It causes neural plasticity to disappear, and it cuts off dendrites, and it turns you into a zombie. Nothing like treating zombies. Like, I'll tell you, if you get zombies in your classroom lined up on little desks and you want them to behave, just give them enough stacked vaccines and their brains will be on fire. They won't form any new plastic networks or be creative, which might disrupt your class.
No way.
Yeah. No way. They're not going to do that.
No, by the way, they're talking again, 2 months ago, again today, a story about putting lithium in the drinking water for the betterment of the American psyche.
Oh, really? Well, better to get a water filter, people, and better get yourself disconnected from the grid. And by the way, I did another number of special stories on this. I wanted to touch on this now, because with what's going on in Fukushima, by the way, we're going to start seeing in Japan more CNS syndromes, chronic syndromes, besides the growth syndrome, which is related to the hypothalamus and pituitary failure, and malabsorption failures of these kids. We're seeing as far away as Philadelphia, right after the march, a 38% plus increase in preemie death, which means they don't have the induced oxidative stress enzymes in these premature babies. So when the oxidative stress level went up, it just killed them. They died in the intensive care nursery a long way from Japan in Philadelphia. So what we're going to start seeing over the next, say, decade, let's pick 10 years if we're around that long, we're going to start seeing much more what I call suicidal and strange behavior of the people still in Japan, especially in the city that's basically I call a death city. If you bring all this hot radioactive isotopes, and parts of Tokyo now will be more radioactive than even parts of Fukushima Prefecture and the nearby prefectures, this is going to start having psychological effects and spiritual effects. So people will have, like this race was what I call a death race. It is almost, trying to laugh at death, saying, I'm going to run through the radiation and still it didn't harm me and I feel
exactly.
Okay now.
Yeah.
So it's trying to, and what it's doing too is not just traumatizing the Japanese, it's trying to embed into the psyche of the planet a death wish toward nuclear war, which is why they keep talking about this ridiculous idea that Israel can attack, even though it has lots of weapons. It can start a conflict, but it can't finish it. And the fact is, if Israel starts it, every United States city and every town over 50,000 will have a nuclear missile targeting it or multiple targeting it. Every single square inch of America will be not fit to live in for tens of thousands of years. So if Israel starts this, America will cease. So there will be no war against Iran, at least not initially. The most likely thing that they want is they want the Iranians to, at the very least, cut off the oil because the bankster maniacs don't know what to do next. And they know that Putin is a nationalist, so we're looking at the very high probability of some level of horrible conflict, just enough to make sure it cuts off the oil so that the economy crashes, so the banksters can generate more debt.
Very easy to do. You sink one tanker.
But eventually, this whole game that they're playing is going to break down. And I tell people, I see this decade a nuclear war, a biological war, a scalar war in our future. And people need to be spiritually and psychologically and emotionally ready for the fact that what we're doing is playing with a kind of fire. This is the old fire that was given by the gods. It eventually, fell from the sky. The fact is, what we're doing is setting up something that even the globalists can't control when it gets out of hand.
It's true. Hold on, Bill, please. We have to pause. Hold that thought. Even the globalists can't control when it gets out of hand, and indeed, they won't be able to. Be right back with Dr. Bill. Okay, do you remember where we were?
Yes, we were talking about the effects of this radiation.
When something got away from them, they wouldn't be able to handle it.
Right. Now, here's what's likely to happen. Firstly, their number one thing that they're trying to do is create enough debt they can crash the economy of the world sufficiently to have a new banking system for the world. Because we only have 3 nations, you mentioned on your show, and I mentioned on mine,
Right.
that are basically left. They're not Rothschild central banks. You know. And that's really the bottom thing that I had a funny dialogue with my professional trainer this morning. I said, you can say G or God damn you, but you can't say Fed damn you, which is why, which is why Muammar Gaddafi is now dead after being tortured on the video phone, and actually, treated in an inhumane way by people who were supposedly liberating the country.
Well, those were not human beings.
Right. What they did is they released the country to tribal warfare, which is, by the way, that's why there's a blackout, and they don't want his son to get to the court in The Hague, because if he tells all of the things that are really going on behind the scenes, a lot of people are going to be pretty damn embarrassed.
Well, if I were him, I'd be committing my memoirs around the clock right now and putting them in real safe hands.
Well, what I'd be doing is sending them to safe hard drives, distributed in networks all over the planet, and videotaping all this material.
Absolutely.
And then coming on programs like yours, mine, and others, and just putting all this material out there. Now, I tell people, although all of this radioisotopes are there, and we've got smart meters and everything irradiating us, you can take things that will protect you. And I repeatedly put that on my program. I'm always updating it when I get the latest research. We've made some new discoveries that help to protect the body from radiation. For example, Dr. Durakovic did work 25 years ago. Dr. Dorsaf Durakovic, triple specialist in radiation toxicology, and he went to Daiichi. And one of the things he said, and I suggested to him, is that all these workers are getting huge amounts of radiation. They're trying to minimize it. Should all have their blood banked, because at some point, they need their bone marrow banked. They may need a bone marrow transplant because their blood's going to crash, or they're going to need to be treated with very aggressive treatment because they've got cancer, and they need a bone marrow transplant. Number 2, everybody in Japan should be on nutraceuticals. Now, I know Dr. Busby's talked about the idea of taking calcium pills, and he's a brilliant toxicologist, but taking calcium is useless against radioisotopes. You need to take things that will chelate it out. In fact, something as simple as a probiotic will block 95% of even...
Okay, hold on there. Now, cesium takes the place of calcium.
Right, so what you want to do, but you don't absorb calcium if it's just if it's not in the form that's highly absorbable. All you're going to do is you're going to displace some, but you're still going to absorb it. So what you want to do is the body is pretty selective, actually.
So if probiotics actually work better than...
Just a probiotic will take out 95% of cesium-137 and strontium.
Really?
That's already been proven in studies, just a probiotic.
Taking it every day.
Ones, the Rizal 6 strain, and we've got the Howard U strain. These are the most powerful strains in the world. If you take a chelating agent like, our Keelermax, which is at NutriMedical.com, 888-212-8871. You take these things, or you take our organic zeolite. This is the only zeolite that's not washed. It's really cheap, too. By the way, it's cheaper than the other ones that are out there. You're going to protect yourself from these radioisotopes. They're going to go in your GI tract, and you're going to breathe them. And most people don't realize every day you swallow about 1 liter to 1.5 liters of mucus every day from all the things washed off your lungs by your cilia. So all these radioisotopes don't necessarily stay embedded in your lungs. Most of it, 99.99%, gets swallowed and goes down your GI tract. And if you have the right probiotic bacteria and you have the right chelating agents, they just go out in your stool. So there's real simple things you can do for background exposure. And the key is, even people that survived Nagasaki and Hiroshima, it wasn't how much radiation they were exposed to or radioisotopes, it's whether they can make 20 to 30 billion new cells a day and 3,000 to 4,000 miles of DNA a day to reproduce cells that are healthy enough they can rebuild organs that have been injured or stressed. And when you can't do that because you don't have the correct nutrients in your diet, or you're not taking things to chelate up to the isotopes, you decompensate. So whenever I hear people thinking to cure anything, it's silly. Look, it's all just wellness. You're temporarily winning the battle, and you're allowing your cells to have the support so they can rebuild themselves.
Well, that's just like the old hormesis argument. It is a joke.
Right. So the whole idea of cure was invented by the drug companies to say that they're the only ones that can cure. So you can't say you can prevent a bladder infection by taking cranberry juice. So every day, I develop new protocols to treat various illnesses, and I put them up on my site, and I provide the consults free, and I help people. I tell them they don't need to panic over this. First off, number one, I heard your commercial with Biodome. Great idea. Have greenhouses. Start cooking your own food. Drink filtered water. But don't sweat it. We're living in North America. You can reduce your dosages here in North America at the moment. And yes, there are going to be some particles, but the fact is, if the stress that you'll create in your mind, worrying about whether you're going to absorb one of these particles, is probably more damaging. But you do need to change your habits. In other words, if it gets raining heavy, stay indoors. Because if you take simple cloth or paper towel and wipe your car and then take your radiation meter and put it over it, you'll say, oh my gosh. You won't go outside in the rain. No more dancing in the rain. Wait till the rain's finished. And, you know, simple things like that. Don't eat any more tuna. Don't eat fish that you haven't scanned.
You shouldn't have been eating tuna for years, but yes, absolutely.
Yeah, tuna is bad. I haven't eaten it for years because of the mercury, but now we got an extra load of
dioxin, too, is loaded with
dioxins and all the other nasties, yeah, because they're higher in the food chain. But, you know, those issues of Fukushima are things that people can deal with now. The problem is we're going to have an American Fukushima because I just have our radiation expert, Chris Harris, on. He's on every Thursday usually. And what he's reporting is the NRC are not going to fix things so that extreme weather, tsunamis, earthquakes, or coronal mass ejections and loss of power to the grid are not being engineered into the system to protect from American Fukushimas. So any number of things could happen, say, in the next 10 or 20 years. A tsunami from the Cumbre Viejo, Vecas Island in the Azores, a New Madrid fault quake, which is 25 reactors like that, just severe, you know, extreme weather knocking out the power grid, a coronal mass ejection that knocks the grid out. Any number of things. And when you look at the odds, if you're an odds maker and you talk to somebody in Las Vegas, and they get out their little calculator and they work out the odds, they tell you, like, this is not something you want to bet on, right? And so if you brought the odds to a real smart mathematician odds maker, he'd tell you that you're asking for trouble. And I differentiate between what I call an accident and an on purpose. What the government's policy are doing in the NRC, what the international IAEA are doing, is they're preparing the world to psychologically be ready now after this destruction of Japan, our brothers and sisters there, from slow immolation with nuclear radiation in the Northern Hemisphere. They're preparing us psychologically and spiritually for a nuclear war.
That sounds like it.
They are. Yeah. And they're preparing us, they're kind of like slow burning us, and it's causing this GI syndrome and the CNS and hypothalamic pituitary syndrome already in these kids. And it's going to accumulate and cause more serious problems, not just there, but if it continues for years, we're going to start seeing that showing up in the United States and Europe and all through the world.
Okay, hold on. We'll ponder that and come back and give you some more to think about after this. Okay, back with you folks and Dr. Bill. Okay, Bill, go ahead.
Yep. Now, they can get a lot of also updated information. I'm posting some unique information on my website, NutriMedical.com, and my other website, Clay and Iron. That's Nutri, N-U-T-R-I, medical.com, or Clay and Iron. And I have some news sites there with unique articles. One of them here, just got up tonight, is Gillard's uranium backlash. And, of course, Julian Gillard pushed to sell uranium to India, has triggered a fight with her party's left-attracted disquiet from Pakistan and infuriated Foreign Minister Kevin Rudd, who, by the way, was consultant already in India at the time she made this move without consulting him.